Signore e signori, buonasera. Benvenuti alla Casa Italiana Zerilli-Marimò della New York University. Fortunately, I'm not the speaker for tonight because, as you can hear, I couldn't speak for more than 2 minutes, so you're lucky. But I couldn't really pass on the occasion of introducing to you a friend and colleague with whom we shared many summers in Florence, and who is a fantastic researcher and speaker, as you will hear tonight, on the occasion of one of the most beautiful exhibits that the Metropolitan Museum has dedicated to Italian art, the one current show on Michelangelo, and especially on the drawings. And the combination of this fantastic exhibit and the expertise of Mauro Mussolini exactly in that field, and the fact that he combined his knowledge of these ancient techniques with very modern technology, as you will see in the way in which he delivers the conference, really makes this lecture that you're about to hear one of the most engaging and interesting that we present during this academic year. So even if I have very little voice, I couldn't pass on this chance. So Mauro Mussolini is an art and architectural art historian with a PhD from the University of Venezia. Over the year, he has taught art history and history of architecture at New York University in Florence, and that's where we met. And I see Jane Tile was there, and Elena Bellina, and we were all colleagues of Mauro and big fans of him in Florence. He also taught at the Università per Stranieri in Siena. He was also a visiting professor at the Kunsthistorische Institute in Florence, the Max Planck Institute, and the University of Virginia at Charlottesville. He was a fellow at Villa Tatti, that is the Harvard University Center for Italian Renaissance Studies in Florence, and at the Getty Center in Los Angeles. He was most recently a fellow at the museum, at the Metropolitan Museum of Art, where he saw really the conception and the gestazione of the exhibit currently on display, of which he followed the different phases. So it's a great fortune that we have tonight with us Professor Mauro Mussolini to talk about Michelangelo and paper as palimpsest. Please welcome him very warmly.
Thank you so much for the introduction and for the kind invitation at the Casa Italiana Zerilli-Marimò, an institution to which, as you have said, I'm deeply attached since 2005. Tonight, Professor Albertini has entrusted me with a great responsibility. This presentation will focus on the occasion of the opening of the extraordinary exhibition at the Met, dedicated to Michelangelo's drawings. The exhibition is curated by Carmen Bambach and was opened to the public just 2 days ago. So my talk has to be somehow appropriate to celebrate this magnificent exhibition. For this, I have no jokes, no funny images, and everything high and proper for this once-in-a-life occasion to see some of the most important and influential drawings ever produced in the Western world. I'm also delighted that among those drawings now at the Met, there is one sheet that was a perennial source of fascination for the last generation of scholars. It is the most important drawing that come from there's one in recto and verso, that come from a very well-known group of 20 sheets containing more than 70 designs for the Fortification of Florence that was sketched by Michelangelo between the years 1526 and 29. This set represents the largest number of Michelangelo's drawings for a single architectural commission to survive, and among the most spectacular designs of his entire graphic oeuvre. The set also combines a different variety of architectural drawings, such as sketches, studies, survey drawings, and demonstration drawings. Some of them are the largest sheets of paper in the entire Michelangelo's corpus. The image displays all the drawings in their corresponding proportions, but it do not include those versos that are blank. Without further delay, I will lead you now on a chronological journey through the turbulent years corresponding to the most intense political engagement of Michelangelo in the so-called Second Florentine Republic. Here is a brief synopsis of those well-known events. In the first day of May 1527, Rome was tragically sacked. On May 17, in the aftermath of this dramatic event, the pro-Medici government fell and the Medici were banished. A new government was established on May 31st. That event was the official birth of the so-called Second Florentine Republic, strongly opposed to the Medici. At this point, Michelangelo was directly involved as a military expert by the two opposing sides. On the one hand, on September 1527, the Medici Pope Clement VII appointed him superintendent of Bologna's fortifications. While the artist was never able to take on that role, the nomination reveals the Pope's high esteem for his skills in military engineering. On the other hand, a few months later, in January 1529, the Republican government of Florence offered Michelangelo the position of magistrate of the militia. Furthermore, on April 1529, Michelangelo was confirmed as general overseer of the walls and fortifications of Florence, a post that was very lucrative. In June 1529, Michelangelo went to Pisa to inspect the riverbanks of the Arno. I will be examining an episode that is related to one of the last drawings we are going to see today. Despite the numerous twists in the plot, such as his flight to Venice in September 1529 and his return to the end of October, Michelangelo maintained his position with great responsibility, mainly working on the fortification of the hill of San Miniato, till August 1530, when the city, after a long siege, surrendered and the Medici regained government. From their publication in 1940 by Charles de Tolnay, the drawings for the fortification of Florence represent one of the most forceful pièces de résistance in the artistic literature of the 20th century. Almost every important scholar, both many Michelangelisti and many architectural historians, have engaged with the problem from different points of view. Some of them have sought to trace a linear sequence between the various projects, from the simplest to the most complex, or vice versa, from the most elaborate to the most feasible. Others have endeavored to group the sheets by type in order to understand their specific designs and to locate them according to the existing documentation and known facts. To sum up, the main goal of prior literature has been to order the designs chronologically in taxonomic sequence, classifying them in terms of typological forms or to locate them in the corresponding urban context, reaching very different conclusions. I have collected a number of quotations from these authors, which you can see on the out that you have with you. Let's start with the first one. That is Tolnay, that really discovered them, and I will read very quickly some of the lines just to see the contradiction in the literature. This drawing proceeds from the simple to the most complex form. Somehow. and from the geometric conception to an organic one. This military conception is correlated with an eminently artistic spirit. They are bold emanation of a sculptor's fantasy. Sorry, it's very small and I cannot. Instead of an anthropomorphic inspiration, we find a zoomorphic one. The bastions in the drawings remind us a cross-section of certain crustacea with long antennae, orecchioni with their extended pinchers. And they bears a relationship to cross-sections of the lobster and the crab. The forces which radiate from these bodies may be compared to the physiological function of these animals. This was a seminal interpretation that is still repeated today. On the other hand, Vincent Scully said, who wrote the second oldest article on these drawings, because they were pretty a 20th century discovery. He said, the power of the sensuously, the power of the sensuously felt diagonal to destroy boundaries and to create reflex makes them live and grow as spatial forms. In this, they are similar, for example, to the best of Wright's diagonal reflex plants, as that of Taliesin West, but very far from formalistic mannerism of some of the Wright's imitators. So this very interesting correspondence between Michelangelo and Wright, on which Bruno Zevi founded his assumption on the quality of both Michelangelo and Wright. Talking about going in chronological sequence, this is 1961, the first edition of the very important architecture of Michelangelo by Ackermann. He said, the drawings eloquently testify to Michelangelo's concentration on the power of the defenders. This is interesting because his changing position is the power of the defenders, not of those who are attacking. His bastions springs from the walls like crustacean monsters eager to crush the enemy in their claws. And this is the position of Tolnai we have just seen. Purely formal, another aggressive biological form. In these later drawings, that Michelangelo anticipates the form of Baroque fortifications. And this is another crucial passage for the success of this set of projects. And here you might see the correspondent here. This comes from another drawing of Michelangelo. And here another comparison. Sorry if I not. In 1964, there was the revolutionary exhibition dedicated to Michelangelo, and here you have the replicas of the drawings displayed in this very expressionist setting. And now I think I have to go very quickly with Italian, saying, talking very little bit about the interpretation of Bruno Zevi. These drawings are the core not only of the creativity of Michelangelo, but also the center of his human and civic experience. Like the drawings of the Laurentian Library, they are like the drawings of the Laurentian Library, but in a landscape scale. Portoghesi, exactly the opposite in the same book. We do not have to believe that the fortifications of Michelangelo were intended to terrify the enemy as monstrous animals. This is an impression just given because we look at them as graphic outlines, just as arabesque. And here is the arabesque that were published in this book, in which he wrote exactly this very sentences. Another very important scholar, of course, is Tafuri. I do not dare to translate him. I just use the Italian quotation. Spazi contratti, lacerati, intersecantisi, continui o aritmici, in uno stupefacente repertorio che veramente fa pensare ad anticipazioni figurative al di là della storia. Splendide testimonianze grafiche del disadattamento in cui vivono ormai gli intellettuali italiani, che vedono fallito il loro compito universalistico e che si abbarbicano tuttavia ostinatamente ai loro specifici strumenti di intervento. Lo zoomorfismo e l'aggressività formale delle fortificazioni di Michelangelo sono già al di là dell'architettura. Uno stupefacente repertorio che fa veramente pensare ad anticipazioni figurative al di là della storia. Impossible to translate these passages, but I'm sure probably they were already translated in an edition I don't know. Very quickly, Leonardo Benevolo, very simple, occasional incursion in the military architecture, a gratuity, a useless play in a constant two-dimensional abstraction. So very, very bad opinion. Brandi, arbitrary, everything but the fans, con tutte quelle curve che si muovono in qua e là, danno una meravigliosa idea di arbitrario e di tutto fuorché suggerire difese o ripari. So not really good as architectural fortification. The final one, Giancarlo Argan. Let me go back to my note. It is futile to fantasize about the elevation of these drawings because Michelangelo's fortification began and ended with the ground plans, the opposite of Portoghesi. It would be an error, however, to consider them as a kind of intellectual adventure undertaken in a state of patriotic excitement and therefore substantially isolated from the mainstream of his architectural work. An architecture of action and gesture which was totally non-linguistic. And it was also the first where no thoughts of the antique entered into it in any way. Without that drastic experience, the artist probably would not have been able to clarify the manner of posing the problem of the antique in anti-classical sense. This idea of Michelangelo as an anti-classic architect became one of the most important topic and ideas of the 1964 book. So, despite their different conclusions, there is a common feature in all this position. All of them have all of them have shown very little concerns to the material aspects of the sheets. Also, they did not pay attention to the communicative strategy that those drawings manifest in their broader framework of relationships. My approach differs from earlier scholarship in several ways. I start to consider both the material characteristic of paper, supports, and the nature of the drawings they contain. In doing so, the original set of 20 drawings should be subdivided in 4 coherent subsets of sheets in which the material features of the paper accord with the way the projects are represented graphically. As you see, only 6 drawings of the 20 are drawn on their verso. Now I go back and forth to show you the recto and the verso. So very few of them has drawings on their verso. Furthermore, I did not wish to underestimate the fact that Michelangelo worked contemporaneously on different options. He made several alternative solutions at the same time, developed them in parallel but on different sheets, sketched and wrote here and there on areas of the paper that were still free, doing this without following a strict order. Some sort of order, however, can be detected. And here is my second point. Despite the apparent chaotic complexity of the sheets, all those designs clearly follow simple principles of military defensive strategy. They break up the flanks of the bastions and increase the number of firing points. They deepen the ditches and protect the walls with escarps covered with earth. They add outward-facing casemates and fortified position from which guns and fire through embrace. Sorry, let me. They add outward-facing casemates or fortified position from which guns are fired through embrasures to avoid the dead zone and to protect the weak spots along the walls. The casemates provide the artist with the opportunity to deconstruct and reconstruct the traditional shape of the ravelins that are defensive outworks and transform them into lunettes, tenniles, hornworks, and even crownworks. Oh, sorry, I'm going. This is what I was fearing. It means that I have deliberately selected the drawings from the Fortification of Florence as a topic complementary to the Met exhibition. On the one hand, I have very recently written on this subject twice, in a shorter version in the essay on the Met catalog under the title Michelangelo and the Experience of Space, in a longer version in the essay on another catalog entitled L'Assedio di Firenze, an exhibition held at Casa Buonarroti, Florence, the past summer and dedicated to the Second Florentine Republic. But also the drawings for the Fortification of Florence will constitute the final chapter of my forthcoming monograph entitled Michelangelo and Paper as Palimpsest. Based on my original research carried out in the most important collection in Italy, Europe and the United States, this book will investigate Michelangelo graphic activity. Specifically, I will pay special attention to the texture of the material and seek to deduce the original format of the sheets and their use in artist's studio. It is very well known that Michelangelo utilized, modified, and reused his papers during his long life as both a functional system for recording and archiving and an organic resource to serve as an aid to his creations. By contrast, the ways in which the artist tried to take full advantage of the versatility of paper and how he handled his sheets over the course of the decades have received relatively scant attention. My analysis in paper will include not only watermarks as a source of not entirely reliable data on dating and provenance. I will also analyze the various techniques of preparing sheets in the workshop, smoothing, trimming, whether according to the type of graphic instruments to be used on them, blind stylus, metal point, red or black chalk, pen and ink, ruler, or the type of drawing to be executed, sketches, studies, survey drawings, templates, modelli, demonstration drawings, presentation drawings, etc. All these observations are also intended to illuminate the chronological sequence of ideas and sketches jot down on the same page, often in a rather chaotic manner. The aim of my own methodological approach is to develop novel modes of analyzing these documents on paper in terms of their productions, use, and purposes. An archaeology of paper, if you will. For this reason, I'm very interested in the drawings for the Fortification of Florence by Michelangelo, and the set offers a comprehensive summary of the most important topics I will afford in that book, at least for 3 reasons. First of all, these drawings provide an exemplary picture of a variety of different kinds of papers used by Michelangelo in a single commission, both in terms of quality and size. Second, they bring into sharper focus the visual strategies adopted by the artist to present the project to his patrons and elicit their interest. Third, they reflect Michelangelo's special interest in topographical sketches and large-scale design, as well as his commitment to documenting topographical details and landscape infrastructures. This is an aspect completely overlooked in the previous scholarship. It is worth mentioning that all the drawings of this group are held in Casa Buonarroti in Florence, one of the most elegant and precious museums of the city, and the oldest Casa Museo ever dedicated to an artist and open to the public. This institution houses the largest corpus of Michelangelo's drawings in existence, about 200 architectural sheets and 100 figurative drawings, and also an impressive archive of documents pertaining to Michelangelo, the so-called Archivio Buonarroti, which includes, among other things, 13 large volumes containing hundreds of documents kept by Michelangelo, the majority of which are autographs, letters sent and received by the artist, his ricordi, autobiographical notes or memos, the contracts with patrons and institutions, an extraordinary number of poetical works. A vast archipelago of paper fragments arduous to navigate without the aid of a database or images or an updated electronic or card index that, in effect, do not exist. To bypass this gap, I have started carrying out my photographic campaign of those paper documents using different methods based on digital visualizations and imaging techniques that quickly evolved into an integral part of my analytical approach. Digital visualization informs the analysis of drawings and papers toward new perspective, raising new questions and challenging the conventional parameters of traditional scholarship. In this regard, my collaboration with the graphic designer Leonardo Pili has profoundly influenced my exploration of Michelangelo's oeuvre on paper. His expertise on enhanced imaging, manipulation, and rendering of visual materials, as well as his remarkable ability to virtually present the results of my research, had a great impact on the way I dealt with and organized the material, recalibrating my goals and steering my interests. One of the most important researchers in digital humanities, Paul Jascott, director of the Wired Lab for Digital Art History and Visual Culture at Duke University, has recently pointed out that visualization is, in this sense, morphological, and it gives form to the otherwise hidden connections and filiations between individual objects and can help generate a new, more comprehensive one. I fully endorse this interpretation, and I also consider my analysis on Michelangelo's drawing to be pertinent to an array of Renaissance artists whose graphic oeuvre show similar characteristics, such as variety of quality and format of sheets, problem in attribution between master and assistants, fragmentation of sheets, chaotic mise-en-page. Relevant examples include works by Raphael, Baldassare Peruzzi, Antonio da Sangallo the Younger, Andrea Palladio, and Jacopo Tintoretto. But let's return to the drawing for the Fortification of Florence for a closer look, following these points. Point 1. Subdivision in coherent subgroups of sheets in which the material characteristics of the paper accord with the way in which the projects are represented graphically. Point 2. simultaneous execution of alternative solutions made on different sheets in the same subgroup. Point 3. Addition of sketches and inscription here and there without a strict order on areas of the paper still blank, independently from their subdivision. Here is the first subgroup. It comprises 7 sheets of common size with demonstration drawings carefully executed in pen and ink with abundant washes to indicate wall thickness. These sheets outline projects for fortifying city gates on the basis of standardized elements, show many explanatory inscription, and have no drawings on the reverso. A number of scholars have sought to identify the drawings as projects to fortify the many city gates of Florence. Another body of scholarship has discerned a stronger connection with the city gate called Porta al Prato, and an identification that could be valid only in general in view of the paradigmatic quality of that site, a long wall, a ditch, and a tower in correspondence of the gate. The ditch, the tower here, 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 and a long wall. You see. Pietro Marani firstly suggests that these 7 drawings should have been loose pages of an unbound album. His brief intervention was critical to my reconstruction. My analysis of the paper strongly supports this idea. The sheets are of common size and bear a watermark of a chariot, typical of paper of ordinary quality and size. Sorry, there is something, okay. The sheets reveal a growing complexity of architectural solution from the simplest to the more complex one. In these first three drawings, Michelangelo's interest relies on widening progressively the angle of the bastion, this one. In the last 4, Michelangelo expands the angle at the center and he curves the front in a convex concave number of variants. One can think of them as a pattern book of exempla that would allow Michelangelo to highlight his credentials as military architect. In a similar way, his copy after the Codex Conner made in 1516 would have enabled him to present himself as an architect well versed in ancient Roman architecture. Those were certainly the first of the fortification designs to be executed, and I'm inclined to put them at the end of 1526. The second subset is composed of 4 sheets containing preparatory sketches made in preparation of the 4 demonstration drawings that form the third group. The first, on your right, is an extra thin half folio of common size. The half is that one without watermark. This one. The position of the watermark is always in one of the two, at the center of one of the 2 halves. That means it is a typical reused piece of paper, very suitable for sketching. The other 2 fragments on the left are of a good quality paper. One watermark can be even detected, and it is appear here. CB17A is folded irregularly along the dotted line in zigzag. It was used at first to record some expenses, then filled with sketches in no particular order and then cut irregularly. In the verso, it also bears a date of September 1528. Another date is signed on the verso of CB 14a, and that's July 25th, 1528. Both dates were uncritically used to determine the chronology of the all set of drawings for the fortification, to 1528, or even more inconsistently to the year later. Nevertheless, it is easy to understand that the two records are just quick notes jot down irregularly on the corresponding verso after the execution of the designs. This is another everyday example of reuse of paper in the studio. Particularly interesting is the last drawing, the 27, here in recto and verso. It is a sheet of a royal size and high quality paper. It bears an eagle watermark that does not belong to any other sheets of this subset. In 1928, Johannes Wilde, a great scholar of Michelangelo, was the first to detect the hand of Antonio Mini in the figure drawings, an opinion repeated to this day. Mini was Michelangelo's loyal assistant, generally known as not very talented. The sequence of the different drawings is again clear. The red chalk comes first, followed by the black chalk, and the pen and ink come last. Starting the analysis from the recto, if we dig archaeologically through the layers, separating the different strata from the newest to the oldest, the ink drawings with the study of fortification of Porta al Prato by Michelangelo go away, and we are left with the black chalk. We can clearly see the tentative mark-making that characterized the graphic manner of an assistant, but sometime different on the verso. Let's turn the drawing this way. Again, if we dig archaeologically through the layers, this is the sequence. If we cancel the fortification by Michelangelo, we are left with the black chalk and the red chalk drawings. If we cancel the black chalk figure drawing of the assistant, we are left with the oldest layer in red chalk, and that is an intriguing monumental composition. The drawing is ambiguous in its composition, but also too rapid and carefree to come from the same hand that made the black chalk figure. The composition involves groups of intertwined figures extending in different directions. The subject is the brazen serpent, and the composition is still remarkably static, which would push the dating of this invenzione back by some years. A comparison with other undisputed drawings, I believe, could reopen the debate to its attribution. The lonely eagle watermark clearly reinforces the idea of the inclusion of these sheets among those for the fortification as a recycled paper. And here, comparison with the preparatory drawing for the Battaglia di Cascina at the Ashmolean, and it's interesting to consider this kind of outline. Then here the effect of the chiaroscuro in this Louvre drawings, and here the pointed noises in this Annunciation at the British Museum. The third subset is composed of 4 sheets of royal size, all of excellent quality and containing well-defined demonstration drawings. They are all folded in 2 and bear a pier watermark, not a rare one, but characteristic, as I said, of the paper of a very good quality. Here is the backlit of the 13A and its watermark. Clearly indicated on the drawings are the riverbed of the Arno and the Mugnone and the system of the streets and ditches existing and projected, as are the postern gates and walls. 3 of them are for fortifying the Torre della Serpe. at the angle of the walls surrounding the area known as Prato di Ognissanti. The fourth shows a defensive system for the nearby Porta al Prato. In the most mature of the solutions devised for this site, one can distinguish the sequence of drawings materials used. Again, first red chalk, then sometimes drawn with a straight edge, then pen and ink for the principal contours, and finally ample ink washes to indicate wall thicknesses. The diagonal lines of fire, also drawn in red chalk, evokes the forces of attack and defense and lend the drawings a great dynamism. These diagonals provide an orientation determining the position of the walls drawn in pen and ink, with areas of dark wash indicating the cross sections. Large areas of land done in the lighter wash contrast with the ditches which are left blank. Because of the paper and the careful execution, there are clearly demonstration drawings related to the project for the Prato di Ognissanti. The four sheets can be divided in two pairs. The pair with the concave convex bastion is related to the Torre della Serpe we have seen before, the Tower of the Snake along the Arno. Tolnai suggests that these two sheets essentially depicted two floors of the same building, which with 15A below 16A. But I believe they are just two slightly variants of the same design at the same scale. The second pair, 13 and 14, contains two projects, one for the Tower of the Serpe, the other for the nearby Porta al Prato, to be read in sequence. I think these sheets are playing on a previously unnoticed ambiguity. The drawings seem to form an ensemble that relies on the spatial continuity of the details of the landscape: the river, its banks, the walls, the ditches, the bastions, and so on. Seen together, they conjure up a very powerful image. I have recreated the combined effect of the two projects next to each other and tried to obtain a bird's eye view. These sketches on paper seduce and surprise, while transforming the image of the city with new fortifications. The drawings show how the conventional tools of planimetric design were vested in Michelangelo's hands with an unprecedented power, capable of captivating and astonishing the observer. At the same time, the terribilità of its proposed new fortifications project an image of the city as unconquerable, redefining the nexus of public architecture, civic identity, and the nature and scope of political power and military prowess. This leads one to speculate on how Florence would have looked like if those fortifications had been built, and what impact the semiotic transformation of its urban space would have had on its overall image. But this image was constructed just on paper, given that these are sheets whose solely function, in my opinion, was to obtain from the city magistrates, inspired by such elaborate schemes, a prestigious and remunerative post as a military architect. It should be remembered that in 1526, Niccolò Machiavelli advised Pope Clement VII to institute a new magistracy of the Cinque Provveditori alle Mura. Machiavelli himself became the secretary of the new organ, the task of which was to adapt the city walls to meet the exigencies of modern artillery warfare. Figures close to Michelangelo were involved, as were architects such as Antonio da Sangallo the Younger and others. After lengthy debates involving the whole city, the Commission decided to lower all the towers along the walls to create cannon emplacements. Contemporary chronicles record the horrified reactions of this work by citizens who watched the demolition of the glorious symbols of the city of a city that was perceived to be impregnable. it is safe to assume that Michelangelo reacted immediately to those renovations, elaborating his own ideas on paper. I also think it would be possible to date all the drawings previously considered to 26 to 1526-27 rather than 28-29, according to irrelevant records shown before, and to link them with an interest in military architecture shared by Clement VII, Machiavelli, and Michelangelo in those turbulent months just before the sack of Rome, 1527. We do not know whether Clement VII was ever able to see these projects by Michelangelo. Nevertheless, their cultural references are closely linked to the discussion among the Pope and Machiavelli, recorded by documents, rather than the frantic resolution taken after the sack of Rome by the anti-Medician government, as generally said. Although they are experimental, the 4 demonstration drawings for the Prato di Ognissanti are not utopian, and it's often, as it often claimed. If unnecessarily elaborate from the point of view of practical defense, they are functional in terms of Michelangelo's presentation of himself as equal to the task. The drawings served just as credentials to appoint Michelangelo as a military architect from both sides of the contestants. And now I'll go very quickly on this reconstruction of the many drawings visible just in the verso of the 13. There's one, there's one, there's one, there's one, there's one, there's one, and there's one. This operation is necessary because if you want to compare the different solutions, you have to extract their forms from the confusion of the sheets and try to visualize them. In this sense, I think that the visualization is morphological. Once officially appointed, Michelangelo immediately changed tack, abandoning his early ideas and proposing only economical and practical solutions that primarily focus on the hill of San Miniato, the most vulnerable point of the city. Matteo Rosselli painting in Casa Buonarroti celebrates Michelangelo's appointments as general governor of the Florentine fortification in 1529, proudly shows a simple bastions in the hands of his assistant. Indeed, as soon as he was officially appointed, Michelangelo changed course. He abandoned the former designs. He moved on to carrying out practical and economical projects. Especially approaching the war, he thought that the phase of captivating designs was over. Michelangelo took from military architectural tradition bastions made of earth and packed straw, covered on the exterior with unbaked bricks. Such materials enabled speedy and economical construction in low-lying areas of the defensive system, with simple bastions at the more vulnerable points, and, on the hill around San Miniato, a more elaborate offensive structure to which he devoted most of his energies, notwithstanding his superior's contrary views. Lastly, the artist imposed expenditure cuts so as to concentrate resources on precise intervention that were both crucial for the city's safety and would have a powerful visual impact. For instance, Michelangelo's decision to protect the bell tower from artillery fire by using mattresses has become one of the most famous episodes in his biography, and there is no reason to consider this anecdote as legendary or apocryphal. On the plain, Michelangelo turned to a simple system of bastions and ravelins built on the weakest point of the walls. A ravelins is a detached outworks, as I said, located in front of the inner works of a fortification. and they were ideal both for attacking the enemy with direct fire and for defending the walls with lateral fire in the weak points. The Quattrocento architectural theorist Francesco Di Giorgio Martini praised them for their low cost and expediency of construction. To this new phase belongs the sheets that form the fourth subgroup. They relate to questions of surveying and or implementing defensive work to be executed quickly and at low cost, at the final stage of preparations when the besieging army was already camped on the hill surrounding the city. Among the drawings of the last subgroup, I will discuss only the two of them that have received the least attention. Casa Buonarroti 11 and 28 verso show two proposals for double-thooted casemates, fortified gun emplacement for the walls of Oltrarno. The sheets 11 contain no drawings on the verso. It is a survey inscribed with accurate measurements given in braccia, 340 at the middle of the tower, and from the Torre del Miracolo to the bastion of San Pietro Gattolini, 2,950 braccia. San Pietro Gattolini corresponds to Porta Romana, where the bastion is sketched. But which tower is the inscription referring to? No explanation has ever been given. If we measure out 2,950 braccia, we hit this point, the Kidal from this point, and you see how precise was the Michelangelo's measurement. The Kidal of Santa Rosa, the origin of the western walls of Oltrarno here. Moving quickly to the sheet 28, it is possible to say that the recto is a preparatory study for one of the demonstration drawings of the third subgroup. The verso instead represents a project that belongs to a later phase. Another indication of reuse of the sheets during time without any clear order or rationale. Also, it has never been noticed that this strange polygonal shape, this one, depicts the corner that still exists at the south corner of Porta Romana. On the other sheet, the wall that corresponds to this one is inscribed Bastione Porta, and it is easy to see both the ditches and the streets. The two projects of which I here offer a possible reconstruction are very different from the previous ones for the Prato di Ognissanti. These were meant to be executed quickly with low expenses and based on the real-life needs presented by the siege. The drawings for the Fortification of Florence attest to Michelangelo's commitment to documenting topographical details and landscape architecture. In the final section of my talk, I will consider this very set of drawings. I will expand the discussion to include two pretty similar drawings in which it's possible to discern Michelangelo's particular interest in this kind of renderings. As I anticipated, a topic completely unnoticed so far. I have labeled the sketches in these two sheets as interlocutory drawings, or, if you will, drawings done in conversation. Michelangelo's role as superintendent of fortresses involved a number of survey expeditions to inspect the territory's defensive infrastructures. Between the 3rd and the 6th of June 29, Michelangelo was invited to Livorno and Pisa to survey their fortresses and to repair the damages wrought on their riverbanks by the overflowing of the Arno. It is the same inspection shown at the beginning of my talk in the chronological outline. A folded folio in the Archivio Buonarroti features a manuscript by Stefano di Tommaso Lunetti, Michelangelo's assistant, is very talented, detailing the expenses incurred. The inner sides of this square contain a sketch described by Tolna in 1928 as ungraspable traces with red chalk. Paola Barocchi thought they were, quote, larval sketches with a possible relation to the problem of the Pisan fortifications, end quote. And again, Tolnai, in Tolnai's corpus on drawings of Michelangelo in 1985, reiterated his point, saying, undecipherable marks that Barocci believes may be connected to Pisan fortifications, end quote. And that was that. The sheets was not being analyzed since then. If we rotate it, we enhance the line. It is possible to say that the quick but assured sketch in red chalk depicts the eastern side of the river of Pisa near the Fortezza Nuova, as evidenced by a comparison with an early 19th century land registry map. We can make out the roadways outside the walls, the main religious buildings surrounded by streets, and the bridge of the Fortezza drawn twice, here and here. You can see that Michelangelo sketched the large bastions along the banks of the river, shifting them slightly away from the Fortezza, most probably to avoid an overlap of lines. I think Michelangelo was here sketching extemporaneously, perhaps in an effort to visualize the buildings under discussion while talking with one or several interlocutors. The artist made mistakes and erased them. You can see here are really as you do when you make a wrong line. Look at the second bridge, exactly. Redrawn right next to the first. The bend in the Arno also appears to have been retraced. The erasures are not very meticulous, as if they had been made by a soft piece of bread. The Ponte di Spina is identified by its characteristic 4 arches. It is this very outline that led me to another sheet I had been pondering on for a while, this one. The following example serves to better contextualize the sketches of the plan of Pisa in the graphic oeuvre of Michelangelo. It is an half of a folio of good quality with no drawings on its verso. The drawing occupies the half of the folio that bears the watermark, an anchor, and a circle topped by a star. The study of a horse have been connected to the frescoes for the Pauline Chapel in the Vatican, started in 1542. Hidden beneath the anatomical details executed in black chalk is an earlier and rather puzzling scrolls in red chalk. And here is the sequence. We rotate the drawing, we cancel the later black chalk drawings, and we enhance the line in red chalk. The sketch has never been identified, but the detail of these duplicated 4 arches led me to think of a bridge crossing a river in front of a building drawn twice. The reconstruction with heightened colors reveals a topographical sketch similar to the one for Pisa. In effect, the sketch represents a large area of the city of Rome between Trastevere and the Vatican, following the Via della Lungara and its surroundings. It is reasonable to think that Michelangelo executed this sketch around 1542 at the moment, recorded by Giorgio Vasari, of intense competition between the artist and Antonio da Sangallo the Younger for the commission to fortify the Borgo and Porta Santo Spirito. Again, fortification drawings, talking about fortification drawings. The sketch also reflects Michelangelo's preoccupation with the defensibility of the Vatican from the Gianicolo hill and its Porta San Pancrazio. We can see the lines of the fire extending from the same location from which the Landsknechts breached the wall and entered the Borgo during the sack of Rome in 1527. This reticulate plan is interesting and appears to depict a piazza opening onto the river. Beside the Pentimento near Castel Sant'Angelo, the artist sketched the space in front of St. Peter's. He outlined the so-called Spina di Borgo, as well as other strategic military locations such as the Passetto, the elevated walkway Clement VII used to flee to Castel Sant'Angelo during the sack. Also, we find the rounded tower of Niccolo V, the palace's main defensive modern structure of the time. We can also detect two further crossings over the Tiber, the Ponte Sisto in the lower part of the sheet, and a crossing in the center. I think it might signal the ancient boat crossing, clearly visible in Giambattista Nolli's 18th century map of Rome, close to the remains of Pons Triumphalis, here and here. This strikes me as a very modern way to abstracting the main axis of a place, not too far removed from a sketch of Piazza del Campidoglio by Le Corbusier and other Michelangelo's work, of course. The similar sketches in which the impact of style or artistic manner are completely irrelevant, and what is important is the capability to abstract and synthesize with precision and effectiveness the most important elements of a place. The fortification drawings, in their extraordinary creativity and freedom from graphic conventions, provide deep insights into the most spectacular sheets of Michelangelo's maturity and go some way toward offsetting the near complete loss of drawings and models relating, complete loss of drawings and models relating to the main Roman buildings planned by Michelangelo, the Capitol, Palazzo Farnese, and St. Peter's. Anticipating, though, the revolutionary drawings for San Giovanni dei Fiorentini and Porta Pia, you might see at the Met exhibition. In the drawings for the Fortification of Florence, Michelangelo seems to be unparalleled in his ability to summarize a single sheet's architectural ideas of great intensity, imagination, and farsightedness. These drawings are so dense and layered with inventions and changes of minds that they acquired an almost three-dimensional character, and they compensate in part for the loss of Michelangelo's model for the same fortifications as we have seen in the painting. These remarkable sheets testify to a calculated communicative strategy that enable Michelangelo to impress his patron and to obtain administrative positions and military commissions that ensured decision-making and financial control, as well as the freedom to experiment with various projects during the course of the work, following his own judgment. Thank you so much.